Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. This is your host Nino, about to discuss with you how to get online with a Book 8088 computer via an Ubuntu machine. But let's slow down things. The Book 8088 is a famous modern-made DOS machine which is featuring 640 kilobytes of RAM, an Intel 8088 sort of compatible processor. As a bit of a modern feature, it also has a compact flash card as hard disk, EGA graphics, and so on and so forth. What is really nice about this Jurassic screen from the 1980s is that it also features in its version 2 a COM port. A COM1 port, a DB9 serial port essentially, which we can connect, and this is what this whole mess is about, it's actually quite harmless, to a USB to DB9 serial adapter, which commonly Linux has no difficulties in recognizing, essentially connecting the DOS COM port to a Linux serial port. In my case, it's a dev TTY USB 0 port, quite typical indeed. How you're doing that? Via a so-called null modem connection. And that really looks like this. Let me show you the most basic version here on a pair of DB9 ports. First, you're having here the RX and TX pins which are switched. You realize blue here is left, blue here is right. Green here is left, green here is right. So whatever is transmitted gets received in the one and in the other direction. What remains constant to the upper rightmost pin connected is the ground wire. So ground to ground and RX to TX and TX to RX. That would be the most basic connection. Unfortunately, on the Book 8088 side of affairs, this is not entirely enough and you need to connect a couple further things. Here you see these pins, the upper left and the lower left. And you see this free pin here, the second one from the right. Well, these three pins here need to be connected. Yeah? And also you need to connect those two center pins. The lower right pin remains unconnected. That doesn't matter. So the two center pins just wire, making a loop and coming back. And these three, well, you can see with a pair of scissors and a little bit of fantasy, you can create such a wire. And that way you have established a serial port to serial port connection between Linux and DOS. And indeed, that is even the most, period correct type of connection, given that in the early mid-80s, nobody was really all that much about networking in everyday life. In fact, even larger Unix boxes were sometimes connecting via serial, no discussion. So this is a little bit of a luxury experiment, therefore. But having this serial connection, we can run a TCP-ip connection over it. And for that, we need mTCP by a certain Mr. Brutman from brutmanlabs.org. And despite this being software for DOS, it is a modern website with modern tools. And let me show you a little bit around here. So when you visit this website, you really need one thing. Here you are seeing a little bit of a list of what is available. Most interesting of all is Netcat. That is a tool which is allowing to channel things to and from TCP-ip connections and create raw connections where you can even chat with each other. But you also have classical FTP and Telnet tools and whatnot. So you see, the requirements are modest. We, with our 640 kilobyte of RAM, are far above them and totally can use them. And now the question is only, you need to create a so-called SLIP connection, which is serial line IP connection. There's also the possibility to create a PPP connection, but that is just when the people who are doing SLIP got super fancy and thought of automatizing a million things. We will not be buzzing around with PPP. We will be just keeping things to SLIP. What you really need to download is from the current versions. I got here the topmost one, the mTCP one from 2023-0331. That's sort of sweet. So that is really all we need to do here, but we need one further tool in order to turn our serial port on the DOS side into a tcp-ip connector. And from there, we need to get from Krinware.com, we need to get something called pkt-d11.zip. And inside of this, you will find a file called ETHERSL.com, Ethernet over serial line. That's the thing you need. So you need ETHERSL.com in order to be able to utilize the utilities in mTCP and enjoy the wide possibilities of the infinite net before you. And now let's talk about the configuration, assuming that you have downloaded ETHERSL.com on your C drive in DOS, and you have also put on your C drive in DOS somewhere in some neat folder mTCP. I put my stuff fancilessly in a folder called mTCP, indeed. So, on DOS, you need to create a couple of, bit of a setup. You need to create a file called mtcp.cfg, where you're having these lines: packet int OX60 MTU576. Everybody's recommending that, so we're doing it. Host name of your choice. I picked dossier as a pun on DOS. IP address of your choice, but somewhere I have been reading that there should be at least 2 away. So don't make it 1 and 2, but like 1 and 3. There's a reason why I did this, okay? So some IP address of your choice, of the DOS machine then, a net mask, a gateway. This is gonna be the address of the Linux machine here. A name server, yeah, I picked Google's DNS server, but yes, you really can go for that. And then in autoexec.bat, you are setting mtco slip is equal to true, and you're saying set mtcp cfg is in the C drive mtcp.cfg. This is this file which we were just discussing. Once you're having that on the Linux machine, wrote here again where you're getting mTCP. On the Linux machine, you are then supposed to set up the connection so that also Linux sees the serial connection as a network connection, right? First of all, we are setting up the line TTY USB 0 to a desired speed. I picked 9600 because somewhere I read that the top speed a real Intel 8088 could handle has been 19,200, and 9600 is quite realistic, even a bit swift for the period. 2400 might have been more realistic, but 9600 is not too far away from how things were going. You will not find in the 80s connections with 115,200 baud or something. Like, this is delusional. Then we are doing a serial line attach after we have set up the serial line to say that it is local and that we do not want hardware signals. We are attaching it. SL attach means serial line attach. Works a little bit different between Linux and some BSDs, but not much. So there's a little bit of fluff here going on, which is just saying these two are a little bit of making the whole thing more verbose, and then saying that it's a direct connection. L was for 3 wires. Like, this is just like, tell us what happens and keep it primitive. P slip, no compressed protocols, nothing. Just pure normal slip at the speed of 9600 on our serial device, TTY USB 0 at the end, in order to, you know, get your terminal back. Then you're doing the if config of SL0. This is serial line 0. This is what happens after you do the SL attach thing. The SL0 interface appears. So you're making an if config configuration of SL0 with your IP. This is the Linux machine's IP, point to point, not point to point. There's only one T here. Point to point the DOS machine's IP, which is the number 3 here, like 2 addresses away, with this MTU of 576, which is maybe optional, but I included it, and saying up. And then you are adding the route add, the route towards the DOS machine is going over SL0. So yes, our serial line port is going to lead us to 192.168.1.3. So we have a route and we can talk with it. And then just two things which you will be needing in order to forward this machines, this Linux machines, internet address to your DOS netbook so that you can serve the infinite web. What was it? Kusanagi? The web is truly vast and infinite. Yeah. And we are then saying essentially echo 1 into proxys net IP4 IP forward. You of course cannot do that with sudo, because sudo will complain about the forwarding operator, and then you can do whatever you want. But anyway, echo the 1 into the IP forward. Then you're doing the IP tables, the adjustment necessary in order to route everything through your wireless network card. For me, this is WLAN 0. In the future, Linux is going to certainly give it some sort of completely absurd name. But yeah, it is right now WLAN 0. I could still reset it that way. And then you are supposed to start on your DOS machine the Ethernet slip packet driver. And, you know, I have just made a record here for what it is likely going to be like for COM1 and COM2. We need only COM1, but my gosh, maybe somebody of you has a machine with 2 COM ports and wants the other one too. So it's ETHERSL 0x60, like 0x64, 0x3f8, 9600. This is the IRQ, and there are a little bit of hardware discussions are there. And then we really should be able to use the mTCP tools. For instance, on Linux, you can set up a netcat listener, and on the DOS machine, you could connect to it, or vice versa, you know. And that's really all there is to it. And as we're having netcat, you know, we already could connect to a sort of web server. Moving things over here, so you hopefully see the DOS machine a little better. Let me make that larger. You see I am in the directory of mTCP. I can actually type you out from the upper directory, autoexec.bat. So you see the 2 configuration lines I mentioned to you. So there we are having the mTCP slip is equal to true, and mTCP CFG is equal to mTCP CFG. And equally, I can type out to you this mTCP CFG. So you see its contents. I had, as I just noticed, misnamed it in my own records, it is mTCP CFG, not mTCO CFG. mTCP CFG.conf. So that's what we're having. Because it's not .conf, it's CFG. It's just type. Sorry, I'm also getting a little distracted with these wonderful names. mtcp.cfg. So that's the configuration here. That's what you need to do in order to, yeah, get into the internet. And the thing you might ask yourself is, where exactly are you getting? Can't answer that for you. But if we are saying dir, we're seeing here lots of files in the mTCP directory, right? Including something called copying.txt. And we can actually, do that try that out with netcat. So first of all, I'm just going to make a normal connection. Netcat target 192.168.1.1 on port 999. Okay. And here on the Linux machine, I'm going to make netcat -L for listening, -P for port 9999. So the Linux machine is now waiting for the connection. All right. And the DOS machine is now going to connect to it. Pressing enter. Oh, connected. The Linux machine is not half as spectacular. The Linux machine is just like got onto a new line. Likely we're there. But on the DOS side, oh my God, we are connected. It's much more like in Mission Impossible, which I can, of course, transmit. Mission. Now I don't get an echo here, but it did type out on the Linux machine, mission. And if I decrease things again a little bit, if I now type impossible, this is going to appear over here, and it just did. So it is possible to connect the Linux machine with the DOS machine, and that's all great. Having actually netcat, I'm now using Control-C and then Alt-X to exit it on the DOS side, and the Linux side closed automatically. Having netcat, we can do another very nifty trick. We can actually misuse it a bit as a sort of primitive web server, serving exactly one page. We can make it repetitively or once. I will do it here only once for the demonstration purposes, but we are having there this copying.txt, right? We can say type copying.txt, and we can pipe that towards netcat. If somebody connects to it, as we're going to say, listen on 9999. So, waiting for connection on port 9999. And now let us shift our attention to the Linux box, where we shall just do that. Connect to port 9999 and watch as the document gets displayed. And see 192.168.1.3 and 9999. And when I now press enter, then you will see how this document is going to scroll down. Not too swiftly. 9600 baud. That's not the world. But yeah, there we got our document. You can press enter here. Yeah, I think that's it. That's sort of strange. I'm not sure it got all of it. I'm going to Control-C it. Then I'm going to ask for it again. And nothing will happen. Okay, but at least partially we can transmit perhaps not too long documents that way. I'm going to just Control-C this whole thing. It's not really working further, but nonetheless, we were able to partially at least transmit things to 192.168.1.1. So that's cool actually. Escape. What happened with you? I am afraid the poor little DOS machine froze. So I will have to reboot it. But before I do so, just to mention, there is this ping.exe, and that can in fact ping Google. I'll have to restart it. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. And then we may try the ping. In fact, you may even see how the network is established by way of this ETHERSL command. So we're now starting MS-DOS. Very good. And now we're going to say ETHERSL. I might really put that just simply into the autoexec.bat for OX3F8 and 9600. So great. This is what happens when you start it up. And changing over to mTCP, we can now play with ping www.google.bg, Bulgarian Google. And you see, we are having a successful ping. And that is really all there is to it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, a lot of further possibilities remain of what can be done using that setup. In particular, as we are having netcat, I very much suppose usually the machine will not hang up as it did. So forgive that little hiccup. But that, of course, is going to open the door for all sorts of pleasures, and I hope for you as well. With that, I truly hope you did enjoy this video, and I kindly thank you for having watched it. I hope to meet you here again for future adventures. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please be so kind and consider joining our little club. Until we meet, I wish you a wonderful time, and goodbye.